Hey guys, welcome back to yet another banger of an episode at CCR, copyright, trademark, the Colton and Craig's Ramblings podcast, with your hosts, me, Craig, and
And
Colton.
me. That's me, the
That's
guy.
that's Colton. He's the other guy. He's
Yeah.
the other C in CCR. So, do you wanna start off, or should I start off with today's topic?
Y- Um, you should start off because we'll start broad and then get narrower from there.
I'm a big fan of the founding fathers. I love them all to death. I think they're all very interesting, and I think personally, and this is a fact actually, I don't think this is a known fact by any esoteric historians, that if you were to IQ test most all of the founding fathers, you will find they were all incredibly like above even like natural levels of IQ. They were so intelligent. Did you know that?
I did not know that actually.
Yeah, I made that up, but it sounds really true. But
I
I
may
really,
agree.
it sounds right though. It's like sounds pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, I'll give you that.
Sounds pretty good. I mean, it's completely false, but hey, sounds not bad. But my reason for bringing that up and about them is I think they were I think they were genuinely some of the smartest statesmen ever to exist. Like, so George Washington was a really good general, right? He made pretty much nothing but great decisions
hmm
when it came to his military staff, when it came to how he attacked, how he chose to fight, his cabinet. He made a lot of really good decisions as a military general. But what I think one of his best ideas ever was is he was really anti-political party, which is something I am as well.
Yeah.
I think political parties are meant for low charisma, dick riders to try and get popularity. And if there's one thing I hate in this world, it's low charisma dick riders. And you can quote me on that. But it's one of my favorite things to talk about is just like how different founding fathers were. And my favorite being George Washington. And I realized that, and I kind of started thinking about it today with like different founding fathers and their views on political parties, because Washington was a very middle of the road guy, very intelligent, but like very quiet, very middle of the road. Just that's George in the corner,
hmm
singing to himself or whatever George Washington did. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's weird. Somebody who really his main thing was like, hey, I hate my fucking job as president. It sucks, but so I'm going to limit how much work I have to do. Which is, by the way, a huge factor in why presidential power is so limited.
hmm
Mostly because he hated his job, but he was so militant against political parties to the point where Thomas Jefferson started the Federalist Party. I want to say, do you remember? Was it Federalists?
Oh Christ, I can't remember.
It was the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans. And even though I don't want to say he wasn't a militant supporter, but he was a constant supporter of the Federalist Party, and it really was stuff that he agreed with. Right, he agreed with his ideas of a stronger federal government, more
hmm
cohesion between the states. He personally was one of the guys there to watch the documents of Confederation or whatever fall apart.
Articles of
Articles of
Confederation.
Confederation. Thank you. So I think it's so interesting that somebody who we know based on just what he was up to, he was very smart. And even though he wasn't very political, he was so against political parties to the point that even though his friend Thomas Jefferson started a political party that he agreed with on pretty much everything, he still
hmm
refused to openly support it. And even when like he was in support of it, he's like, "Yeah, I support this policy. I'm not a party member. I don't support the party. I don't believe in parties."
Yeah.
And I kind of started thinking about that today because I was like, I live in California, so and as somebody who's not a communist, I vote Republican, even though I don't really like the Republican Party. And when I
hmm
looked at like the ballots, it was 99%. Hello, my name is Chad Thormington the Fifth, and my job, what I want to do, I want to dick ride my way into success. I'm a man of mediocre to low charisma, and you know what? I'm ready to talk about things. What things? Here's go to GOP.net. Those are my views. And that like it's the parties have sown such a deep division in people that really doesn't need to be there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And even when you look at other uh, founding fathers who had started the political parties, if they saw what political parties would do to this country, they would ban them in the Constitution. They would constitutionally ban uh, political parties.
That's a
And
really
I,
good point now that I think about it.
yeah, because, um, and I honestly think it would probably be from a governmental standpoint. It would probably read something along the lines of, the government cannot endorse or acknowledge any political parties or affiliations or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't tell people no, but you can tell the government you can't acknowledge it, and you can't like maybe can't you can do other stuff to like say no, but they can't say no obviously because it's early America.
Yeah.
But and the more that you look back on them, even so, you have other the guys like hippie liberal and anti-slavery guy Benjamin Franklin. Um, he was another one of those guys who really didn't have a big opinion on it, but he also wasn't into partisan politics.
Mm-hmm.
And another guy who, when you look at his what he did in his life, you see why he watched partisan politics tear France apart. You know, uh, it's one of those things that I think is so interesting that it's so ingrained in American society now that our founders, like the idea of a political party at first was just to make life kind of easy on you as a voter.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's fucking hell. Well, I like elephants and not donkeys, so I vote elephant. It's just so bad for democracy. And I'm not
Yep.
even that big of a democracy person. I personally think democracy is kind of gay. But I can even acknowledge that it's bad for a system that's meant to do good because it waters down what like any great man would be capable of.
Yeah, like, and I remember I talked about this a little bit in episode 3, where I was basically saying, like, if you're gonna have political parties, that's fine, but you at least gotta have more than two. And I mean,
Yeah.
sure, we technically have the other parties, but come on, let's admit it, they're not there.
Well, like yeah, and also the system was explicitly set up so that there was only two viable ones. Like the last time that there was five major candidates, Abe Lincoln won.
Oh yeah, I completely forgot about that. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're right.
that's the only reason why he won. It's because the whole country was so split. And I think that, like, not to justify perversion of democracy and what our nation's founders believed in, but I think that the Civil War did a lot to like end the idea of a multi-party or like multi-whatever system
Hmm.
because it's just like guess what percentage of the vote Justin Trudeau won?
Uh, 51.
It was something like 27
20, 27.
because it was a plurality.
Oh,
So
I want
either
plurality.
yeah, because he won the biggest because there's like 900 fucking parties.
Hmm.
And like, as an American, you're sitting there being like, well, that's kind, oh, the American system sucks, but at least in a winner take all, you have a majority, right? Because in a winner take all, it incentivizes there to be two of you.
Hmm.
But in like a plural, so like that's kind of the problem I think with parties as an idea is that you either wind up with a plurality system, which just says fuck you to the majority of people,
Hmm.
or you end up with a two-party system like we have, which says fuck you to exactly half of the people every other 4 years.
Yeah.
And I was looking at my ballot and I was like, I'm gonna vote along party lines, and I kind of felt like I died inside because as much as it is like, oh, it is somewhat necessary for me and my beliefs that like there's not going to be a Democrat in California that I necessarily agree with. It's just not going to happen because the party.
Hmm.
There's probably two or three Democrats on that ballot list that I agree with, that I will never vote for or think of voting for because I know how they're going to vote.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, it's like that's kind of cool because I kind of don't care because it's like well, who cares? It's local politics. But on the other hand, it's like this is not what our founders fundamentally supported. So it just kind of it irks me that we've fallen into this. I don't really know how to describe it. It's certainly not democracy. In that same way, it's not democracy, you know.
Yeah.
But it's just this constant like battle we're having with, I don't want to say ourselves, but with like this idea that there's us and there's them and there's these good guys and these bad guys, and like we're the good guy group, and you have to vote for other elephant people because the donkeys don't like you, and this whole like fucking nonsense. It's like Abraham Lincoln will be beating you with a stick right now. Like Thomas Jefferson would put your head through the wall if he heard you talking about our democracy this way. And it's just so sad to see, what could have been the greatest system in the history of the United States, or not the United States, sorry, the world, kind of devolve into this uber partisan, oh, if you're not us, you're them, and they're evil grind set that's just disgusting, in my opinion. That's my founding fathers topic, by the way. I just wanted to talk about how, um, yeah.
Oh, that's it.
Well, like I also think it'd be cool to talk about, just like what they believe in, also,
All right, let's
because
do it.
it would also it will. I just realized I'm just ranting about my opinion on politics again, and I can't help but think, do people want to hear that for yet another episode? I find that hard to believe.
It's our podcast. Screw it.
Yeah, I know, but like, and then also if we're just talking about president, like early presidents and their beliefs and shit,
Mm.
um, my like deep seated love of George Washington is kind of got me into learning about what other not presidents, what other like early American revolutionaries and early American leaders thought of.
Mm.
And what's weird to find out is that most states were actually anti-slavery at the time,
Yep.
and like most people. Yeah, there
Mm.
was when the Union was founded, they were talking about abolishing slavery,
Yep.
and I think that's so interesting. It's not something we ever really talk about, but it's like weird.
And it should be talked about more, but
And what I
what
thought
do
was
I
so
know?
interesting is that the use of slaves was actually like you assume it was like, oh, it went up over time. When slavery was being discussed in the Continental
1787.
Congress, yeah, in the 1780s, they really weren't talking about the same slavery that was being talked about in 1886,
Mm.
because in 1886 slavery was fucking profitable. If you could get enough land and you have one or two spare slaves to grow like actual food, and you grow cotton, which is why or tobacco, which is why you want the slaves, obviously, right?
Mm-hmm.
There you could throw these cotton balls into a little razor blade machine, essentially, and you have cotton. One person can produce like 10, I don't quote, but it's something like 10 or 12 shirts worth of cotton in a day.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're growing most of your food there, the cost of a slave is low and their production is high.
Yeah.
Slavery of 1778, or yeah, was, if you could get enough slaves to like together that you have a couple growing actual food to feed them, they were looking at about 2 shirts worth of cotton per day.
Yep.
And the cost of a shirt was it was higher back then. Yeah, that's true, but it was way less profitable. So then you have to compare, and this was why some of the southern states were kind of on the border there, is you have to compare, well, what's more valuable? The idea, because like free people are more productive in an economy.
Mm-hmm.
Like a free sharecropper produces more than a slave, because a slave does just enough not to get beat. A sharecropper does enough to feed his family. You know.
Yeah.
So there was this huge conversation taking place, like, should we look at freeing the slaves? And then as after the cotton gin was invented, they basically were like, fuck no.
No, no, yeah, no, 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 no.
Yeah. And it's
Like,
I think that's what,
if I
go.
remember right, it like more than quintupled
Yeah,
the production of cotton.
because the cotton gin it was like fucking lightning in a bottle. I mean,
I know, and it was simple in design.
It was literally this fucking thing spins. It picks up all the little leaf bits of cotton or strands or whatever,
It was like
and
prickly bits.
yeah, and it just separates it all, and it does the job of like 30 people in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So now you can, instead of having people slowly and tenderly pull the cotton ball out of the fucking prickly bits, you just get them to chop all this shit up, throw it into the fucking washing machine. It just became so much more streamlined. And that's one of my favorite, like, industrial fun facts is like,
Hmm.
whenever we talk about exploitation of different peoples in history, we
Hmm.
don't acknowledge that most exploitation was bad. Like, I don't want to say like bad, like it was like not good, because exploitation is never good.
Hmm.
But they weren't good at exploiting people yet. Like historical slaves had much better living conditions than like late American slavery,
Hmm.
because it's kind of, I don't want to say similar to the situation now, but like right now, most homes are like, or not most homes, but like a lot of shit in the country right now is like we have 93 people. Everything was built a long time ago. So now that we have all these new people, it just doesn't match the population anymore. Like our roads, traffic's a huge problem because all of our roads were built in the 40s when our population was half the size.
Hmm. And people
And
owned less cars.
yeah, and people, carpool more. If you ride alone, you're riding with Hitler. I love that poster, by the way. I'm gonna buy one of those for my house. It's like on the one hand, fear mongering is usually a bad thing, but on the other hand, that's so catchy. You ride alone, you're riding with Hitler. It's that simple. It's like not that hard. Just don't ride alone, fucking idiot. But it is like one of those more interesting slavery facts. It's like they realized after they mentioned the cotton gin, holy shit. And because you really only need 3 or 4 slaves, and now you can actually, this was one of the big revolutionary things. You no longer needed slaves to tend the garden because you're making so much money off of their production. It's cheaper to just import food.
Hmm.
So their living conditions dropped massively because of that, because they were getting imported food. And how it is in the 1800s with importing food from like another farm somewhere else is kind of rotten. It's kind of gross. It's cheap slave food, so you don't fucking care.
Yeah.
And that whole nonsense with that whole hullabaloo. But it's just one of those things we never talk about. But it's like, yeah, there's living like slavery, early slavery and late slavery were like completely different world.
Yeah. Like without the cotton gin, the antebellum period would like been completely flipped on its head.
Yeah, and it's one of those things we don't acknowledge or ever talk about, and it's fine because it'd be a weird thing to talk about that much,
Hmm.
because it's one of those things that makes it seem like you're trying to justify slavery. Well, like early slavery wasn't as bad,
Yeah.
but it's still super cool in my opinion to just be like, not cool, but interesting to talk about how um you don't like how massively an institution you would assume like stayed more or less the same, how massively it changed so quickly. Because like whenever we think of slavery, we think of like, oh, it's these evil slavers, and we hear you. Because were you ever told that George Washington took very good care of his slaves? Did you ever hear that line?
I did. Yes.
Yeah, and like because you're a little kid, you don't know anybody. You're like, how could he do that? It's like, well, because his slaves were so much different than John C. Calhoun's slaves, and like how they were treated and what they did.
Hmm.
And also like beatings became more common, and because once again you didn't need nimble hands to slowly pick the cotton out of the flour fucking deal. You didn't need as much diligence to do
Hmm.
it well and do it productive. You needed fucking get this shit to the cotton gin right fucking now. So it created the cycle of greater oppression as greater productivity.
Hmm.
And by the way, that's a those two things are completely correlated. Go to any society and look at how productivity and oppression are correlated, and it's always the more productive the average person is, the harder they oppress people.
Hmm.
It's because when productivity increases, it's almost always because they found some form of automation that requires less like um, attention to detail or artisanal work.
Hmm.
So they realize, whoever's in power realizes, I can just beat them into doing this now. Because before I needed them to like want to do good and like try hard. Now I can just beat them until they do what I want, and beat them until they move fast enough. So it's a very interesting correlation.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and then another one of my another favorite things about the founding fathers is Thomas Jefferson. Do you know who he is?
No, enlighten me.
He was the second president. He was kind of cool, and by kind of cool I mean really cool. He's no George Washington. Don't get me wrong. He was a young statesman who wrote the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. So he was kind of important in U.S. history.
Oh, just a little.
Just a little. He was kind of important to our founding or whatever. But uh, I like a lot of his views as well. As he was another one of those anti-slavery people
Mm.
from like early on. Because by the way, when the cotton gin was invented, I know you know this, but I imagine the average viewer doesn't. We quit talking about slavery because we were this humanist republic who's like here to save the people, and by the people, of the people, for the people, and all this other shit. But as
Mm.
soon as we found out there's a great way to make a ton of money, the slavery debate literally disappeared overnight.
Yeah. More or less we kicked the can down the road.
Yeah, we were like, it's it's up to state rights. It's yeah, something to do with those, right? Yeah, something like
And
that.
then, came the compromise of what, 1850 or whatever.
It was something along those lines.
And then
I
bleeding
always,
Kansas and it was a spiral.
they planned on splitting California.
Yeah.
That would have been an interesting timeline.
That would have been an interesting one.
And like actually, California played an awfully big role in I almost said the First World War. In this, it was the First World War because it was the first war that mattered to the entire world. And by the entire world, I mean the United States. Um, can you tell that? Can you tell my opinion on America yet? Um, like there was a lot of weird maneuvering in the Civil War that had to do completely with the United States. Like they wasted a lot of both sides wasted a lot of energy in trying to keep keep California like what's the word? It starts with a C. Conserved, controlled.
Encircled?
Yeah, like they like the Union and the Confederacy more or less blew their chance to like win
Hmm.
because they were so interested in trying to take California.
Well, you gotta keep in mind, they had the mentality of all we gotta do is hold them out.
Yeah,
So that didn't really help them much.
no, that was not holding it out. And
Hmm.
given they didn't it wasn't like Germany going into the Soviet Union, but it was like they were a group with such intensely limited resources. It's just hysterical to see like when you read about it, and it's like, oh yeah, they wasted 12,000 cavalry and all these horses and all these trains, and you're just sitting there thinking to yourself, these are grown ass men.
Oh yeah, and at the beginning of the war, they invaded modern day New Mexico,
Yeah,
and they would create their own state. They would call it Arizona in New Mexico, and that's the reason. That's one of the reasons why Arizona got its name because of the Confederates.
yeah, it's funny. That's really funny actually. But like that's one of those things we don't talk about enough. Is like, or not enough, but we're now off founding fathers. Do you want to do your little not little? Do you want to show us your thing real quick before we move on to the Civil War? Because I got some interesting stuff about that.
Okay. Okay. So, you're for the audience at home, I'm pulling up this picture. And Craig, you see that guy to the far left? He's in the red shirt. Looks like he's drawing notes.
Yeah.
That is Benjamin Harrison the Fifth of Virginia,
All right. He's of Virginia.
and he was a signer of Declaration of Independence.
All right.
His bloodline is quite impressive. I'm gonna start at the beginning. So the first Benjamin Harrison, he went to America through Bermuda in the 1620s, I believe.
All right.
Um,
1620s.
he would settle in Virginia. Um,
Obviously.
yeah, I forgot exactly what he did, and I also forgot exactly what Benjamin Harrison II did. But the story picks up at Benjamin Harrison III.
Picking
Um,
up.
he was born in 1673. He was the Attorney General, the Treasurer, and a Speaker of the House of Burgesses. I forgot how to pronounce that for Virginia.
Ooh.
And then he would father Benjamin Harrison IV.
They
He
love that fucking name.
Yeah, it's gonna come up a lot. So fucking he would build the plantation that the future Harrisons would have, and I believe it's a museum today.
All right. I like it.
Um,
Museum.
Once again, like he was a statesman. He served in the Virginia House of Burgesses as well, and
All right.
he would die in 1745. So he wouldn't really see, you know, the beginning of American thoughts.
Yeah.
And then we get to the man in the picture, Benjamin Harrison V, born 1726. He was obviously a statesman, and he would be a founding father. He would die, however, in 1791, but he had a lot of children. He would father William Henry Harrison, born 1773, and you might recognize that name because he was the ninth president. And however, he was also the one that like only like lived like a month in his presidency.
He had pneumonia.
Yeah, yeah, and he died in 1841.
Like a fucking idiot.
but but but
But
he he would father another Harrison. I forgot his name. 1804 to 1878. He would
all
be
right.
the House of Representative from Ohio. To be honest, not that great of a legacy. But I'm sorry. But the only reason why I say that is because I'm going to explain it after I say the next one.
Imagine if both of our viewers are from Ohio.
Oops, my bad. Anyway, he would father Benjamin Harrison. 1833 to 1901. He would be a colonel. He served in the Civil War, Union side, obviously.
Yeah.
And he would also be president, the 23rd to be exact. And that little note I said about the earlier Harrison. So he was the father of William Henry Harrison, and then he would father Benjamin Harrison, who would also be president, but he would just be a lowly representative from Ohio.
All right.
I thought that was funny. Like when I looked at it, I was like, oh, that's too bad. And
Like this,
even the Wikipedia article like poked fun at it too.
the Wikipedia. Imagine being dogged on by the Wikipedia article. Like
It
that's
says
not even. That's like past disrespect. That's just mean.
it's like it said some bullshit like he was his father was a president and he would birth a president, but he would not be a president.
Like damn, the good genetics skipped a generation.
And then there would be another Harrison. He would be a major and uh, he would also be a politician, statesman, and he was also a diplomat.
Where?
I forgot.
Okay, I just like point of personal privilege real quick.
Okay.
Um, I felt dirty saying that. Uh, it sounds like you're reading the Wikipedia article the way you're saying the dates, but then you keep interjecting with, I don't remember that part. So from where I'm sitting, it sounds like the guy who was writing the Wikipedia article just forgot shit and was open about it.
No, like,
Like I don't really remember that, but like, anyways.
listen, I hastily scribbled notes for this topic,
Oh, okay, I like it.
and I looked it up. It was to Mexico.
Ooh, it's a terrible job.
I know.
Where are you the diplomat to? I'd really rather not talk about that. France, Germany, Poland. Where? I don't like. I don't. Um. What's your job? Now imagine if all two of our viewers are from Mexico. That would be
Oh, that would be even more awkward.
point blank saying being the diplomat to Mexico would be terrible. Borderline career ending.
Okay. Oh, well. Okay. Okay then.
All right, continue.
Um, and the last one of the family line, 1896 to 1990, William Henry Harrison the third.
All right.
Um, he would be a private,
Ooh.
and I know, out of a major and a colonel who was his father and grandfather respectively. He was just a lowly private. I feel bad for him,
Yeah,
but
me too.
but it didn't matter because he was the representative from Wyoming,
Ooh.
and
Just like Senator Armstrong from the last episode.
Armstrong was from Colorado.
Fuck.
And he would die in 1990, unfortunately. But that's it, really. I don't know what
He left
the
no heir to the Harrison family fucking legacy.
what?
He left no like kids.
No, he had two, but like the Wikipedia article suspiciously did not give the link to them,
Oh,
or even say the names. I thought that was odd.
so his kids just are fucking mess ups.
I would have looked it up, but like it was a half an hour before we started, so I was like,
That's all right. I mean, if the Wikipedia didn't feel the need to mention them, then they're probably like not important.
mm. Well, the backstory of like this whole enterprise is, I remember like one of the founding fathers would father a president, and then that guy would father a president, but I did not know the other like few people who would who are also a colonel, a major, and then like attorney general, treasurer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that the Harris family did a lot of the legwork in building America. Basically, is what we're saying.
yeah, like it has a
Like,
tremendous legacy in America.
yeah, and I mean to be honest, like as cool as it would be to like be related to George Washington as like a distant nephew or something, because all of his kids died.
Mm.
Like, I think it's kind of almost a cooler legacy to leave behind that your family, like, yeah, they didn't go on to like be presidents for 90 generations, but you have two presidents and like 600 civil servants.
Mm.
Like that is like, maybe it's not as flashy as like, oh, I'm the fucking grandkid of Douglas MacArthur,
Mm.
and more importantly, his dad Arthur MacArthur. Just kind of like saying that name,
Yeah.
but like I think that's really cool that in like a sense of like the Harrison bloodline is indisputably American.
Yeah.
Like, oh, what did your parents build? 9/10 of it, like everything. Because like, yeah, that's really cool, Colton. I'm glad you shared that with me.
Yeah, and like obviously you see like the big name ones that when you are talking about you know early America, like John Henry. I probably shouldn't have started with him because there's more, popular people like Benjamin Franklin. But you understand
Nah,
my.
who's Benjamin Franklin? Who's that fucking idiot? I don't recognize that name. John Henry? No, I know that name.
Listen, you understand my point, right?
I get your point. I'm just also a prick.
Yeah, but yeah, like whenever you see that good old painting, you know the legacy of that fourth person from the left. I'm sorry, fifth. Yeah, fifth.
You now know the legacy of the fifth person from the left.
In a really famous painting.
I mean, yeah. Also, to be fair, like everybody in that painting was important.
Mm.
I think Paul Revere is supposedly somewhere in that painting, right?
I don't think
Was
so.
Paul
No.
Revere a big deal? I can never remember.
Paul Revere was the writer who was warning about the British coming.
Oh, so he was just like more like a dude. He wasn't like he's an interesting story, but he's not like an important character.
Yeah, he wasn't a politician.
Yeah, so like if it wasn't Paul Revere, it would have been John C.
Mm.
Calhoun or something.
But
Al-
there was
Although
what?
go, I was gonna make a joke about John C. Calhoun, but he's somewhat esoteric.
Mhm. But there's actually a few people that did not show up in the painting. There was
Like
there
who?
were there were more statesmen that signed the declaration.
I mean, yeah, it would also kind of be difficult, I imagine, to get everybody.
Yeah, because there was 14 more people.
That's pretty cool though. I like that. I like that story of the Harrison.
Mm. However,
Even though,
there are 5 people in that painting that did not sign it.
like who?
There was George Clinton of New York, Thomas Willing of Pennsylvania, Robert Livingston from New York, Charles Thompson from Pennsylvania, John Dickinson from Pennsylvania.
Why didn't they sign it?
I don't know. I did not research that far.
They showed up for the painting, but they were like I'm gonna show up for the picture, but I'm just not gonna do the thing, you know?
But that's still fucking a lot though. Like out of like what 61 people, 5 did not sign. I
That
mean
is a
then.
lot. That's a very low engagement rate.
Mm. But then again, I suppose there was the Battle of the Alamo where like
And they
the
all died.
yeah, only 3 civilians survived Alamo on the American side or Texan side, if you will. But like
Uh,
Travis was like, "You guys can leave, you know. I'm not gonna,
you can
I'm
go
not
home.
gonna,
Like
I'm not gonna let you die here. But if you want to fight to the death, well, stay here."
if you want to die for some reason, I guess you could.
And all
Because
185 people stayed, or soldiers.
there was a lot of not soldiers in that group too, which is kind of wild to think about.
Yeah, there was a solid group of civilians, and only 3 of them lived.
I mean, I guess it's like part of the whole fighting spirit. Like it adds,
Mm,
I think, a lot to like I don't want to say the idea, but like the idea of the American and like the fighting spirit of
yeah.
freedom and independence. Like imagine, like they're like the, Colonel Travis gets up and he's like, "Hey, you can go home. We are not going to win. We have no illusion that we're going to survive. We're probably not going to get reinforcements. We're almost certainly all going to die. You can leave. Nobody will blame you." And these people were like, "No, fucking, I'll stay, I guess."
And that takes
And then,
real fucking guts.
yeah, that takes real fucking commitment. Like, it would be easy for me to sit here and be like, "Oh, I'd fucking obviously stay. I'd fucking fight and die with fucking Davy Crockett." Would I? I like to think so, but to do it, like I can't. Like I can say like I'm pretty sure I would do it, but can I honestly sit here and lie to your fucking face and be like I'd fucking slap Santa Ana? Probably not. You
Mhm.
know, like I think I would stay, but like I also think I would fucking regret it immediately due to 600,000 really angry Spaniards. But like that's just yeah, that's one of those. I think like the Alamo's another crazy thing about like American culture of the time. was just so different than it is like now, or like ever really was.
Well,
It
hold
was
on.
great. Huh.
Um, do you know about the Black Cats, World War II?
Black Cats now.
Okay, so they were essentially these search and rescue boats, not
Uh,
boats, planes. Like they were the ones who were like be able to like actually like float on water,
yeah,
and they would float on water to save like deserted like sailors or like sailors who their ship was sunk or something.
yeah.
These planes would go out and get them. And I don't know if you ever played Call of Duty World at War.
I have not.
It's from like 2008. I don't blame you.
Video
But
bombing.
there's a mission where you play as one of the gunners for these Black Hats,
Yeah,
and obviously like you destroy like Japanese PT boats, Zeros, and while you're doing this, you're also saving like a few American sailors from their sunken ship.
Doom.
Yeah. And I remember in the mission, like you start off with another black cat that's obviously like you, but like it gets shot down halfway through the mission, and like one of my favorite like dialogue from that game was like, "All right, so we're on our own, but the fleet still needs our help. Does anyone want to back out?" And then you just hear silence, and he's like, "Didn't think so." And
I like it.
obviously it's a video game, but you have to think like that must have happened at least like once, right? In
I
real
mean,
life.
you hear about it all the time.
And
Of just like like in heroic last stands, not even necessarily America, but I love hearing the stories of heroic last stand, like true last stands, where like they know that this doesn't matter realistically.
mhm,
Like they know they're almost certainly gonna all die, but that does nothing to stop them wanting to fight.
mhm,
Uh, I really, I wish I could remember the name. It was this fort in India or in Afghanistan. And this was when the British were there.
mhm,
So the British were like at this fort, and it was one of a string of forts that they built to like help consolidate control over the area.
yeah,
So in between all these bigger forts, there was little signal stations so that they could like communicate quickly.
yeah,
So it's morning, and they're Indian fighters. I think there's 20 something Indian, no, 120 something Indians, not that many,
yeah,
and they're doing their thing, being Indian, and they're going about their morning, and there's tension in the air, but nobody, it's not like that big of a deal, right, guys? So at some point in the morning, they get a message basically saying, "Hey, there's a horde of people on their way," and they're like, "How much is that? Probably not that much." And it was a shit ton. 10,000 people showed up to like fucking kill them, basically.
yeah,
And so they panic. Well, not panic, but they like get their shit together. Like, all right, we're gonna fucking board up, batten down the hatches, and they start fighting. And they fight all fucking morning. And people surge up, fucking slam into the walls of this tiny fort.
mhm,
And I really can't stress enough how small this fort was, because it wasn't. This was a signaling station,
yeah,
not like this was not like meant for battle or combat or something like that. This was a little signal station, and as they went along, or not, as the fight kind of progresses, they realize, oh shit, we need help, and they signal one of the big forts nearby them, like, hey, help? Question mark? And they
mhm,
literally just said no. So after suffering like 50 casualties, they're half gone.
mhm,
Uh, they're trying to figure out what they're going to do, and the Afghans at this point, they're like, hey, we will give you anything you want. We will let you go, be free, be alive, like living. You will not be killed by 10,000 angry Afghans, we swear. And all you have to do is just give up this one tiny signal station that you're going to lose anyways. And all these Indian guys are like, no, no, thank you.
mhm,
And so the Afghans keep pushing. And so they fall back into the inner wall. They're running out of ammo. The commander of the fucking station realizes that they can't fall everybody back in time.
Mhm.
And if they continue, like, they either have to fight here and die here, or like they need to stall in order for everybody to get all their shit into the inner sanctum. So
Yeah.
this motherfucker pulls out his sword, grabs his pistol, and just starts cutting down these Afghans by the dozen.
Mhm.
And him and like a few others. But the most important part is this is the commander. This is like he's an older gentleman.
Yeah.
Fucking battling it out. They slam the gates shut. He's still fighting. He's still fighting. Back of the wall, still fucking fighting. They finally kill him. Couple dozen dead dudes away because of this one dude. This one random Indian guy killed like a dozen Afghans, or more than a dozen Afghans. And so the the guys inside the sanctum now, they're like panicking, right? Like any normal person would be. They're like, well, what the fuck do we do now?
Mhm.
They're kind of scared, more than kind of, but they're kind of scared. They're sort of anxious. They don't know what to do. And so they keep fighting and they keep kind of begging for signal companies, or they keep begging using their signal company to, like, hey, can we have some help?
Mhm.
No, hey, can we have some help? And they're still fighting. They've killed 2,000 Afghans at this point.
Holy shit.
Yeah, because the because that, they're just like hordes charging. That really doesn't change very much, but they're just hordes charging. So every shot landed is almost certainly a lethal kill, a lethal blow, right?
Mhm.
So they've killed all these Afghans. The British are still like, dude, we can't. We don't have the people, and they probably didn't. I don't see why they would just give this up for fun.
Mhm.
There's some people who like kind of have alluded to the idea, like, well, what if they just fucking wanted all those Indians and they didn't care? It's like, I mean, I would care, but this is me. So it happens. The last wall that they gave, just like the wall, they just had to give it for tactical purposes. This time they fucking kick in after a few minutes. They kick in the door to this inner wall of this fortress, and it's such a fucking strong word. It's basically a little fortified village.
Mhm.
They break down the fucking door, and they're killing everybody, right? Because now they overwhelming numbers. They're fucking slaughtering everybody. The signal guy, the last guy alive, the signal company leader, is like,
Mhm.
"Can I abandon my signal to fight?" And they're like, "Yes, you can." And the British signal company watches as he fucking kills like 10 dudes as they're like coming into his little shack.
Yeah.
He kills 10 guys. He's so difficult to dislodge. They quit bothering to try and go in and kill him, and they set the building on fire because they were too afraid to like go in and lose the men necessary.
Yeah.
And what I think is so cool about this battle is it's kind of like the Alamo. This battle didn't matter, but it gave the British enough time to get enough troops into the area, and it honestly killed enough Afghans that they won. Like not this battle, but the British won that fight, that war.
Mhm.
They got the forts reinforced. They held the area for like another 20 years, so it wasn't that long, but still. And it was all because these 120 random Indian dudes were like, "We will not surrender." And I love Last Stands because they always, I don't want to say they bring out the best in human nature, but they bring out the coolest shit people can do.
Wow. 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 I did not know that. Thank you for telling me this story.
Yeah, I always like tales of heroicism because we don't hear about them enough anymore.
Mhm.
I don't want to like play down, but like modern wars don't incentivize heroism.
Mhm.
Heroicism, there you go, heroicism. Because they're always like, and I get it, but it's at this point we spend $10 billion on a bomb in $100 billion plane to destroy 7 dudes in a tent.
Mhm.
Like, I feel like, and I'm not saying, like, I would rather spend $100 billion than lose an American life fighting in fucking butt fuck nowhere. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but it just doesn't. You don't get a lot of those tales anymore. It's just not. It's just, I don't want to say way of the past. It's just old.
I
But
understand.
yeah, yeah. How much longer do we have left? Something like what, 20 minutes?
We started at 8:05, so we're like 50 minutes in.
50?
50 minutes in.
All right.
Yeah, it's only been 15 minutes, Greg.
Your time flies when you're having fun.
Anyway, you wanted to talk about the Civil War earlier.
Oh, yes, the Civil War. I always think the Civil War is kind of funky because the South, you know that to this day, 60% of soldiers in the military are from southern states?
Really?
Yeah. It was even higher back then because the Southerners they were aristocrats and they were pretty much. You ever seen Django Unchained?
Yeah.
So you know how Monsieur Candy was like a Francophile?
Mm-hmm.
They were all like that. Like that is the most realistic part of that movie is that they were all obsessed with Europe.
Huh.
And they were obsessed with like European chivalry and they were because the descendants, the aristocrats moved to the south and the like everyday people moved to the north when they came over here
Yeah.
because in the south they could own land and slaves and in the north there was factory jobs.
Yeah.
To massively oversimplify something way more complicated than that. Um, but there was this huge military culture in the South. So you would assume that they would, not want to say completely destroy the Union, but you would assume they would have done way better in like tactics and shit.
Yeah.
They routinely did not.
Yeah.
Like, not to say they were bumbling idiots, but you know as well as I do, there was a lot of very obvious decisions that for some reason they chose not to do.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you're sitting there looking at it and you're like, why would you do that? And what I think is cool about the southern United States that was true and I think kind of still is,
Mm-hmm.
like old European ideas of like honor and dignity and national pride and heroicism mattered so much that they would regularly make poor decisions just because they knew it would be more heroic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know that the United States invented trench warfare?
I think I heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, the idea of like digging trenches and like hiding in them was really cool. I think I want to say it stemmed from cowboys and Indians and shit
Mm-hmm.
because just standing out in the open was a terrible fucking idea when you're fighting a bunch of Indians.
Yeah.
So what do? You dig a fucking hole in the ground and now you're basically behind a wall, and that you can shoot them but they can't shoot you.
Mm-hmm.
The Southerners, like the North began to adopt this tactic of like what they did in the First World War. We're gonna hide in our hole until they charge, and then we're gonna countercharge. And it was terrible, grindy warfare that sucked for everybody and was highly inefficient. Well, not highly inefficient, but like you didn't get a lot
It.
done doing that.
Yeah. It flowed like a river of bricks.
Yeah, it was a slog. You were sitting there, you were both. Well, the Southerners were like the early French. They were like, we're gonna fucking full frontal charge them, and our fucking badass fucking flute player Jonathan's gonna fucking bust it down while we shatter those fucking idiots in their stupid holes. These are people who are hereditary soldiers running the armies. Like these aren't like northern bureaucrats and factory workers. That like the First World War had the most of the officers in the First World War were reserve officers before the war, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
and they had other professions. Officer was just like something they did on the weekends, so they were highly incompetent at the beginning of the war,
Yeah.
right? These were people whose granddad, granddad was like the fucking Harrison of their local village or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
This was a culture of everybody was a soldier because it had to do with honor and pride because it's about drive, it's about power.
We stay hungry, we devour.
Exactly. So the fact that the culture who was so soldierly was like fucking regularly just wandering into the worst mistakes humanly possible is a mix of terrible and hysterical to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, in the one hand, it's like, it's bad that people were dying. But on the other hand, it's like, you guys fucking knew what you were doing. And it's one of those things about, like, this, the Confederacy that I think is so interesting. Is like, you hear about this culture where everybody was a soldier. Everybody's uncle was in the army. They all fought in the Spanish American War. They had these incredibly good leaders. Like, Sherman was a prick and all that, but he wasn't a great military leader. He just understood light things on fire and they can't use them anymore.
Mm.
He wasn't some sort of military mastermind. Ulysses S. Grant was like the only Northern general with any real merit as a general,
Yeah.
right?
Like he knew how to read maps and shit.
Yeah. If you were to compare, and Ulysses S. Grant was a great general, great president. I love him to death. He kind of looks like my grandpa, unrelated. It's true fact.
Oh, I'm gonna thwart that.
I'll show you a picture. I'm not gonna dox my grandpa on the internet.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, too bad. No, maybe he's dead. But he, like Grant was the only person who kind of knew what he was doing, and I don't want to say he was mediocre generally, but he was a very like middle of the road.
He
They
wasn't bad.
pushed. Yeah, he wasn't bad. He wasn't great. He wasn't like some rebel. But then you look at fucking um, you look at what was his name? My friend General Lee. I only remember General Lee's name by the way by the Johnny Cash song General Lee, and the line "My friends all know me" was the General Lee. Um, just because I'm retarded, but uh, General Lee was a fucking well decorated. Um, he graduated Officer Academy, and he was fucking top of his class. He
Mm.
came from a long line of generals and leaders. He didn't just know what he was doing; his whole family knew what they were doing. And the fact that they didn't win the war is just more evidence of like, as much fun as it is to talk about, and I'm guilty of this. Like, oh, the fucking soldier mindset of defeating your enemy in honorable open combat. It was outdated in 1886. Imagine how outdated that is now, you know? And like, it's just like that's one of my favorite wacky kooky things about the Civil War is like as much fun as people have like being like, oh, but they were blockaded the whole time, Craig. They were blockaded. They had very poor mints to make money. It's like, yeah, but this was technically it was post Napoleonic warfare. Fuck you. One, fuck you. Two, three, U.S. military economy was very well distributed. I don't care that there was a lot of steel in Pennsylvania or whatever. Doesn't change like that. That really wasn't a huge factor yet. You know,
Mm.
we're so quick to chalk up Southern loss to like, oh, they're fucking blockade of all their ports. Like, yeah, it didn't help. But they didn't have tanks. They didn't have planes. They didn't have machine guns even. They didn't even have the brass, or they might have just invented the brass cartridge, and the average gun didn't have the brass cartridge. The mini ball was a wacky idea at the time.
Yeah, and like if I remember right, the first like actual like bullet, like rounded to like a point at the end,
Yeah,
came out during the Civil War.
yeah, like so, like certain ideas of warfare that, and by the way, you could tell that the Union war effort was completely an like was ran completely by economists because of the blockade.
Mm.
Because like from a military standpoint, that didn't really make a ton of sense,
Yeah.
but it did make sense from an economic standpoint to like stop them from exporting Southern cotton.
Mm.
But also, fun fact: Southern cotton really didn't matter on the world stage because France had Egypt and the British had India. So uh the actual effect of Southern cotton on the economy was very low, and the Southerners really played it up to each other that it would be like this huge fucking deal.
Mm.
Yeah. Also, just because I keep adding in alsos before I end, also, the Prussians sent military advisors to both sides, and you know what the like main thing that they discovered was
What?
they were better at war than both sides. That was the
Mm.
only real takeaway that they had from uh like watching this. Not like, oh, trench warfare is terrible and don't start it. Not, oh, look at how modern technology can really rapidly change the battlefield. It was like these fucking stupid Americans. Like both like sets of military advisors would like regularly write home and be like, "Yeah, I would have won this war already." These fucking idiots.
Wow. I knew they sent. I knew the Germans were sent, but I didn't know about that part.
Yeah, they both just more or less wrote home basically, "Look at these fucking tools. We're better than them." And then it wasn't the Kaiser, it was the King of Prussia at the time was like, "Wow, that's wacky."
I'm trying to remember. There was a German statesman. I I want to say Bismarck, but part of me don't think it's Bismarck. But the point is, like one of the German statesmen, I remember he actually helped the Union in a way, but by serving as like one of those like hot air balloon spotters.
Oh, I'd heard about that. I don't remember who it is either, but I've heard about that.
I just wanted to interject that out.
Mm. But that's just one. That's why I like the Civil War so much is because like the British and French point blank just didn't do anything.
Yeah, they
Neither one of them gave a
didn't really
fuck.
cared.
Like, if you told me that there was not a single newspaper in London reporting on the war, I'd believe you.
Yeah, I believe you too.
It'd be like, hey, you know that not a single newspaper in London reported on the American Civil War? I'd be like, that sounds right. Like, they really didn't give a fuck. Like, I I feel like they would report on the invention of A1 steak sauce before they would report on like the happenings of Gettysburg.
Yeah,
Which, by the way, A1 steak sauce
yeah.
in the middle of the Civil War.
1862.
Um,
Oh, I remember like in the first few battles, like Bull Run and whatnot. There were spectators, like civilian spectators.
yeah, because it was what a novel idea. You have to remember one time one of the Vanderbilts bought two trains and just slammed them into each other to see what would happen. And like people watched. Because to be fair, I would like even if I could Google what happened, I would still want to go to see two trains flying towards each other, breakneck speeds, the two biggest machines people make right now, just slamming into each other. That's what I like about history. You can sit here and you can be like, oh, they were racist, they were sexist, and the answer is, yeah, they were. You're right. But you know what they were mostly? Fucking interesting.
Yes.
Like there is not a dull moment in like world history, not even just U.S., but like in the world. Like you can even in the interwar periods and between different wars, there's still so much shit going on.
Mm.
Like, um, one of my favorite, my new favorite videos was a guy in the 20s and he was drinking a coke. Like, what the fuck are they putting in this shit? It's gotta be wound up. But like that exact type of thing is like they were just like doing shit back in the day. Health risks? Who fucking cares? You're gonna die eventually, no matter what. Might as well have some fun, you fucking square. Hey Paul, do you hear that they're crashing trains? Yes, I did. I already bought my fucking ticket. And the Civil War is just like a big culmination of those different, just wacky grind sets.
Mhm.
There's these people out here who hold these fucking just the wackiest mindsets humanly possible, and it's like, yep, we're gonna just fucking go with it, and they just did.
There's this. I'm not quite as knowledgeable in this topic, but I really want to. I heard like another wacky bit in like world history is the Chinese warlords era.
Yeah, my favorite, well, not my favorite, the one I know the most about is the oh god, the dog meat general.
Oh yeah, I think you and I are both thinking about the same thing.
Yeah, and that guy's kind of cool. But you know who I feel really bad for?
Who?
There was, and I forget his name now. I watched a whole thing about him. He was a democratic reformer in China.
Oh, Sun Yat Sen.
Sun Yat Sen. And his life story is so fucking cool, but also tragic.
Yeah.
He tried to get like 9 fucking republics up off the ground. Successfully did 3. Government on exile, did another government. The Imperial Japanese support him. Then they pull support. Then they support him again. Then his buddy gets killed, maybe by the Japanese government. There's still more warlords. And you know who he eventually gets replaced by?
Who? Chiang Kai-shek?
Chiang Kai-shek.
Yeah. And he
And it's
basically
like,
stole his ideals.
yeah, and like my favorite part about that is, you know why they picked Chiang Kai-shek to take his place?
Why?
Because Sun Yat-sen, and I say this with like, and I don't say this like as like to call him soft, but he was like genuinely a great person. Like Sun
Mm.
Yat-sen, I don't think had a mean or evil or malicious bone in his body. I genuinely believe him to be probably one of the nicest people in history. When you look at what he did, what he tried to do, it was very clear just looking at him that everything he did was to try and build democracy in China.
Yeah.
They picked Shanghai Shek because one time he killed a guy on his deathbed just to make sure he wouldn't live. They picked Shanghai Shek because they thought that one of the biggest problems was they didn't have somebody who could go like toe to toe and wasn't brutal enough.
Yeah.
And Shanghai Shek did not get his start as a politician. He got his start as a mafia guy,
Really?
and that's like one of my least favorite things about history. Sometimes the good guys just don't win.
Yeah.
In fact, most of the time, as much as it hurts all the Marvel fans out there to hear this, but 9 times out of 10, the good-natured, nice guy who's like here to help the people he fucking loses.
Hmm.
He dies in Hawaii or whatever. I forget how Senya Sun dies. Do you remember?
I remember I was just plain old age.
Yeah, but like where he dies and how. I forget if it was like I want to say he like died basically. I don't want to say poor, but like he basically died where he started. More or less, nothing really accomplished.
Yeah. But
And you got to go.
like a lot of people were touched by him, even like a couple of the warlords. Not not including Chiang Kai-shek.
Yeah, I mean, but like, yeah, actually, there was one of the biggest warlords regularly would support him whenever he was trying to go back for power, but he just never had a good opportunity to keep it. So it's this sad like cycle you get to watch whenever you hear about it. It's like, oh, he gets the people ready and he gets all these gang members and democratic revolutionaries, and oh, yep, that's right, another failed attempt at a republic. And then what do? They pick themselves up, try it again, and yep, you're right, another failed attempt at a republic. And it's like one of those things where you gotta sit there and be like, man, for somebody with nothing but good intentions, what did he do that made God not want him to have power?
Right? He worked so hard, and for what?
Yeah, and it's like, well, Craig, Colton, rambling CCR podcast, like, but eventually Shanghai Shek, but it's like Shanghai Shek was such a fundamentally different person that I would really be hard pressed to even call it the same thing after Shanghai Shek took over.
Hmm.
Like, imagine if on the heels of George Washington, somehow Adolf Hitler came to power.
Well,
Well,
that was quite
it'd
a
be like,
jump.
yeah, like it'd be like, what the fuck happened? What happened to like the mild mannered, calm headed, good guy? Who the fuck is this dude? Well, he agrees with some of the core things, except for that whole democracy shit. What do you mean? Well, he also doesn't like the British. That's not enough. They picked a guy who they thought was like would make a good warlord, basically.
Yeah. Who can actually stand toe to toe with the other warlords?
Yeah, who can actually contend. And I mean, to be fair, as much fun as it is to be like Shanghai Shek was a monster, he probably was, but he was more successful than whatever the fuck Sun Yat saying. So like, as much fun as it is to sit and point and be like, oh, he was fucking bad, he wasn't as good. The good guy wasn't really doing that great of a job.
Hmm.
And it sucks to say that, but it's like realistic. By the way, Chinese history is all very sobering to anybody who believes in like good usually wins. The more you learn about Chinese history, the more you realize that that's not true.
Yeah. And you gotta remember, there were a fucking shit ton of these warlords.
Oh yeah, that's like one of the cooler parts. Is it was basically medieval Europe. There was like, who are you? Well, I'm the emperor of the newly established kingdom of here to there. Why? Well, I met the emperor one time, and I feel like I'd make a good emperor. So you're claiming to be the emperor? Yeah, but just of here to there, and Beijing. Are you gonna push for Beijing? No.
Not yet, anyway.
I mean, I feel like I don't know. I'm not a Chinese warlord, so I really honestly couldn't tell you what was going through a Chinese warlord's head. But from where I'm sitting, it looks a lot like none of them really wanted to push for Beijing at all. Like when
and
you look at their actions, what was that?
I was just gonna say, and then meanwhile, Pui, just gets scooped up by the Japanese.
Yeah, I mean, I if you look at it's pretty clear that the Japanese were behind like 9/10 of the what's it called? Behind like 9/10 the warlords, like they were funneling materials and bullshit to them like constantly.
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty sure the only reason why they supported fucking Seng Yat So is just because they thought it'd be kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like they didn't. There's this like weird thing that they like. Some people whenever they talk about it, like, oh, the Japanese government does really good thing. No, it's like if America accidentally supported a good group of insurgents. It's like, nah, it's not why they did it. The CIA didn't happen to accidentally give guns to the good guys this time. They just were giving guns to whoever wanted them, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now we're on to Chinese history.
I know.
You know what the problem is with being a history enthusiast?
What?
I talk about history a lot, and I know a lot about history. It's one of those things I'm very passionate about.
Yeah.
And what sucks is that whenever I talk about it, it's people, but not people. Like, you know who the main history guy to come up is? It's the guy with the mustache during the big war. You know, the big one, the one that's important.
Yeah, the one that even Becky knows.
Yeah, like the mustache man. And people talk about mustache guy. And it's like, I know about it. And so I'm going to talk about Mustache Man because I know about what Mustache Man was and what he did and what he was up to. I'm not a mustachier. I don't believe in what he believed in. I'm not a neo mustache type of guy. And yet here you are forcing me into that box. Why? Because I fucking know about it. I used to always have that argument with my mom. She'd be like, "You're fucking what are you, some sort of 1920s German right wing political party advocate?" Like, no, it just keeps coming up in conversation. If you want to talk about other history stuff, I know about it. It's just this is the one that everybody keeps talking about for some reason. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah.
I wish people would shut the fuck up about it for like 5 minutes. Just let me like, can we have like history documentaries about other nations and other wars, please? Now, Colton, by the way, for both of our viewers, knows that one of the things I said is not true. But
You'll have to figure that out on your own.
yeah, that won't be very hard if we have too many
That
more
that
episodes.
that's your homework assignment for tonight.
Yeah, Homer, figure out what was Craig lying about. So obviously, I don't have a mom.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was obviously, and I felt bad pretending like it was a good riddle.
Aw.
Yeah, the jig is up. But
They
that is
finally
honestly,
found me.
yeah, they finally figured it out. I do not have a mother. Ich habe es getannt. Ich habe meine Mutti gestoppt, I guess.
Vielen Dank, Skipper.
Vielen Dank. Frau Deckon!
Anyway,
But yeah, I'm very passionate about history, and it sucks that like one particular conflict keeps coming up. I wish they banned talking about that conflict, honestly.
well, let's jump across, the sea and go into Japan and talk about Hojo Tokimoon or Tokimine.
I love JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
No, I'm talking about Hojo Tokimoon.
Yeah, Hojo Tokimoon, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, whatever the fuck. I love those things. Those wacky critters they got out there.
Screw you too.
No, let's talk about it. I just have no clue who the fuck that is.
Oh, long story short, he would be the main engine behind Bushido and this not samurai per se, but why the samurai would be, so into Bushido.
Huh? Let's
Because
talk about
Bushido, if I remember right, obviously Hojo Tokimun's or Tokim. I'm just gonna say like the Japanese pronunciation. At least I hope to God this is the Japanese pronunciation.
it. You're just
Tokime.
making some shit up. His name is Phil.
No, no, no. Like I heard the proper pronunciation once. It was like Tokimine. But anyway,
Tokimoon.
you know what? Screw it. I'm just gonna call him Hojo, his first name. Hojo, like I said, would be the engine behind Bushido and why the samurai would be so into Bushido. And Bushido, if I remember right, was a weird blend of Shinto, Zen, and Buddhism.
All right, so it's a religion.
Essentially, yeah. It was
I, by the way, have no fucking idea what Bushido was. You could have made some shit up, and I would have been forced to
you do
believe
not know what Bushido is?
I don't. I
Oh
now I
come
do.
on!
It's a
Oh come on! It's an important role in the big war, specifically the Pacific Theater. But anyway, Hojo, he was the leader when Kublai Khan, tried to invade those both times, and
obvious.
like, it's kind of funny when you look back on it because the first invasion, they tried to attack and then they all die in a hurricane, and then when they tried to attack a second time with a more serious force, they actually made a beachhead and they started attacking, and then they died in a hurricane,
Sounds right.
and then this was like when this would be like when the mythos started of like divine wind. If I remember right, that's what Bushido literally means, divine wind. But I wait, no, 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 no. I lied. Kamikaze. That's divine wind, translated literally.
Ah,
Yeah. So there would be that would start the mythos of kamikaze, divine wind. Like God is on our side, and then Hojo was inspired by this, and that's when he essentially created Bushido, and he funded a lot for these like Bushido like shrines and whatnot. And he also give like land grants to like samurai. So
I like
obvious.
this guy.
So yeah, the samurai were strengthened a lot under Hojo's reign, and blah blah blah. Blah. Fast forward to the Meiji Restoration. I forgot the fucking quote. Fucking. It doesn't matter. It was like, strengthen the military. Like strong mind, strengthen the military, something like that. I don't know. Point is, Meiji Restoration, and the Japanese people are back, and the emperor is actually the emperor. These this
Epic.
is
That's step one.
this is like 1890s, right? Ish, kinda.
Something like that.
Anyway, and they were like, they're like, remember this Bushido thing? Like, let's really dive deep into it. And like, this new, version of Bushido, it'll be looked upon essentially like how the Vikings like treated their like mythology. Like, oh, if you fight well, you're gonna, be awesome in heaven, but if you
You're gonna
die
give me
like a
a dollar.
loser, you're gonna burn in hell, or in Norse mythology, freeze in hell. Cause
They don't understand what fire is.
yeah,
It's a true fact about the Vikings.
and like they called their hell hell, but but it's Helheim, but they they're not that smart.
They're not that smart.
Anyway, dipping back into actual Japanese history.
It was the fictitious Vikings.
But yeah, this would really, grease the engine into, those kamikaze strikes, those bonsai charges. And why they would, fight to the death for, just like an inch of rock, just
Did you know that?
floating in the ocean.
Did you know that 1 in 247 Japanese soldiers surrendered?
Yep.
That's absurd.
Yeah.
Like we talk about how radical the Nazis, sorry, the mustache guys were. Um, I want to see if not alluding to the mustache guy directly will help our engagement because I feel like we've talked about him in every other episode. It's came up or something related to it's came up.
I don't
But
think
like as
so,
much
but don't quote me on that.
as radical as he's made out to be, and as radical and fanatical his followers were made out to be, 1 in 4, 1 in 4, 1 in 3 Germans surrendered.
Yeah.
Less than 1%, less than
Less
half
than.
a percent
Yeah.
of Japanese surrendered. And we never talk about like how fucking bonkers that is. I didn't know it was because of the wind and the dangle of the swangle or all that, but like I always thought like, man, as cool as it would be to be Mustache Guy with his fanatic followers, imagine being Emperor Hirohito. Like,
Mhm.
imagine that. Like, those people are literally killing themselves before they're getting captured.
Yeah.
Like, that's beyond a warrior culture. That's like a warrior cult,
Yeah. It honestly kind of was a cult.
and that's kind of cool. Like not to be like, I'm not like trying to be like overly edgy. When I'm like, oh, it's fucking epic. It is kind of epic though.
Hmm.
Just to fucking you know, have these guys with that level of fanaticism for what they're doing that they're like, I'll fucking kill myself for the Emperor if he wants.
If
And
he
then maybe
wants,
if he
yeah.
doesn't want,
And
I could also.
it also Bushido, also fueled that one person, to live out the jungle for like fucking 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, that was also crazy. Like when I remember hearing about that, and you know what my knee jerk reaction was?
What?
Fake.
Hmm.
I literally couldn't conceive that being real. Like I remember hearing about it, and I was like, oh, that's completely fictitious. That's the dumbest fucking made up lie I've ever heard of.
Yeah.
And then it turned out to not be a completely fictitious made up lie. And I
And I
was
just. Sorry, continue.
so why'd you do it? Well, the wind mostly. What do you mean the wind? The wind, was on our side. So you fought for fucking ever, and just kept rolling with that. Just fucking forever fight. Yep.
Hmm.
And when were you gonna give up? Huh, when I died, I guess. Like this dude was just walking around somewhere in the jungle, just randomly attacking Indonesians. The war's 20 fucking years ago for the average person, not for this guy.
Hmm.
And just randomly, there's this dude who just appears out of the woods to fucking kill people.
Like, give me
And
your shit.
like, yeah, he was like, dude, I get being interested into something, but like, this is fucking nuts
Hmm.
that you would have that amount of dedication. Like, I don't know of very many people who do much for 20 years consistently like that.
All right. There's one last thing I want to talk about before we close this out.
All right.
One more person. Tojo Hai Han Shiro. I don't know how to pronounce that.
Huh.
I'm just gonna call him Tojo. But he was an admiral. Like they like to call him like the Nelson of the East.
The Nelson? Who the fuck is Nelson?
Horatio Nelson, I believe.
I don't know.
He was a British admiral
Uh, I don't know that
who
much about.
who was like morally ambiguous or something. I'll have to brush it. I'll have to brush it up on him again. But he was also heroic, but he was also an asshole.
Oh, he's just like that kind of person.
Yeah.
I
But
like it.
anyway, duh, 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 duh. He was born in 1848, and when Japan would establish like a navy in 1864, Tojo like enlisted like almost immediately.
He was like,
Like
sign me up.
yeah, he was assigned as a stern wheeler gunner, which I don't know if you know at the time, especially with boats at that time, that was a shitty spot to be in.
Because that's where they were all shooting at.
Pretty much, yeah. Is there like, and not only that, but he just enlisted, so he was essentially at the bottom of the total totem pole. So, but he survived obviously, and blah blah blah. Something about a Boshin War. Once again, I need to brush that up. But point is, he survived, and he went to England for naval college in
All right.
in the 1870s. He would return home in like 1878, I think, and he would fight in the first Sino-Japanese War. He performed really well actually, and he was promoted to rear admiral at the end of the war in like 1895. Um, in 1903, however, for some reason, the naval minister fucking appointed Tojo commander in chief of the combined imperial fleet.
What?
Yeah, I forgot exactly why he did that, but it was a really good choice because Russo-Japanese War.
Yeah.
He took the fleet to the sea, and he defeated the enemy force off of Port Arthur, like northern Australia. No, not northern Australia, in like southern Australia, like Tasmania.
Uh huh.
And obviously he readied ships, for the Russians. Which, keep in mind, was sailing halfway around the goddamn globe just to fight the Japanese because like they took off in like St. Petersburg or something.
Oh yeah, because they didn't. The Japanese, I think, pretty much immediately neutralized them in the east, right?
Yep. In May 1905, they utterly destroyed the enemy. Like at the Tsushima Strait.
Imagine
And
getting raw dogged that hard by basically nobody.
yeah, and by who was recently promoted too, may I add.
He's not even that well skilled. He's not even that good.
And
Nobody knows who he is. You just get fucking slapped by just a dude.
like utterly destroyed. And he dodged his retirement. He decided to work on for the War Council, and he advised the Emperor on military and shit. But here's the best thing I like to tell about Tojo. He was appointed to oversee the education of Prince Hirohito.
Ooh.
Yeah,
So he had a little bit more politically important job also.
yeah. And I just want to end off on that note, like how an admiral was basically Hirohito's teacher.
What are we going to learn about today? The Navy. Oh, come on.
Can't
So
you learn
yesterday.
about like army or statescraft? No.
What are you fucking stupid?
But yeah, we're out of time.
Yeah. All good things must come to an end, and all great things only last an hour and a half.
Yeah,
We didn't get around to any of the dumb shit I wanted to talk about, so that's good.
we can shelve that.
Well, no, these episodes are always more fun when we're not talking about Morbius.
Why not? That's what I wanted to talk about. Then we started talking about Americans and Chinese people, and ugh.
We started talking about things and stuff, not about when the devil shivers when the clown starts to morb.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
See you around. That's the end of this episode.
Yep. We're gonna end the episode now.
Um, and as a good friend of mine once said, spunk gargle wee wee.